It's now a great pleasure to welcome our keynote speaker, Antonio M. Romanucci. Antonio lived his commitment to justice starting with his early work as a Cook County public defender to recently being named Leading Lawyer's #1 civil rights lawyer in Chicago Lawyer Magazine's 2021 Person of the Year. He was also recognized by Chicago Magazine on their New Power 30 list for his many contributions to the Chicago community. As a founding member in the Chicago-based trial firm of Romanucci Blandin LLC, he has fought fiercely for victims of negligence, abuse, and wrongful death arising from civil rights actions, mass torts class actions, police misconduct, as well as medical malpractice. Referred to as the architect of the record-breaking and historic civil lawsuit alongside Ben Crump against the city of Minneapolis and 4 of its police officers for the murder of George Floyd, Mr. Romanucci also has a steadfast commitment to fighting for those seeking justice across the country in complex, high-profile tort cases. These include the fight against the e-cigarette manufacturer Juul, Boeing for its faulty 737 MAX aircraft, the cancer-causing air pollution caused by Sterigenics International in Willowbrook, Illinois, the MGM Las Vegas mass shooting, and most recently, the Highland Park, Illinois mass shooting on the 4th of July. Outside the courtroom, Mr. Romanucci participates in many professional and charitable organizations. He was president of the Illinois Trials Lawyers Association in 2019 to 2020, and has held multiple leadership roles for the American Association for Justice, including chair of its National Finance Committee. He is a founding member of the Midwest Brain Injury Clubhouse and a founder of the Justinian Society of Lawyers Charitable Endowment Fund, where thousands of dollars annually are awarded to charitable organizations. Often called upon by the media as a legal expert, Mr. Romanucci appears regularly on national and local television to comment on his own cases, as well as other high-profile legal matters and trends throughout the country. Mr. Romanucci is now also a UIC alumnus from the former John Marshall Law School, now the UIC School of Law. Please join me in welcoming Antonio Romanucci.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the honor of being here today. Let's make one thing clear. I am you. I was you sitting in that seat. That's why I'm here today. And I need about 15 minutes of your time in order to connect with you and bring you through a journey, a story that you too will enjoy one day as you go throughout your career. I'm going to tell you how I started out my morning, because then by the end of this conversation we have today, we're going to be doing the same thing as how I started out my morning. And that's not by riding my Peloton or listening to Swedish House Mafia, but by pumping my fists up in the air, excited to be here with you today. Remember that. We're going to do that together. But now it's time for the journey. I'd like for you to think with me for a minute, and maybe if you want, just close your eyes for a couple minutes, take a journey with me, because I want you to think back, because by the time we're done, you are going to see your future, just in the same way that I hope that I led my own and I see mine every single day. June 1, 2020. Where are you and what are you doing? COVID is raging, and learning was remote. Lockdown is new, restaurants are closed, offices are shut. TV has become our theater. Tensions are high. The world is now captivated for the last 7 days by the murder of George Floyd. And that's because we saw the gruesome murder on real-time video. Minneapolis is burning, and I know because I was there. Protests and riots are filling the streets of our cities around the world, and communities of color, of all colors, are asking for accountability. They saw what our eyes saw in that video. That video shows we all knew to be true, something that we knew was terribly wrong. Except there's one thing. We are being gaslighted by initial police reports of that incident because the truth had yet to be discovered. What is crystal clear is that decades of lack of trust between communities and police have reached the boiling point. If you did have your eyes closed, open them now. On that June 1st, exactly 1 week after George's murder, my friend and fellow civil rights attorney Ben Crump and I, we held a press conference in a secret location inside a church. To this day, I don't even know where I was because no one would take us. It was too dangerous. We were there to announce that we were representing the Floyd family in their fight for justice, and that we were basing that fight for truth on accountability and trust and faith. Earlier that week, we hired 2 independent medical examiners to autopsy George's body, just days after he was killed, and confirm whether he died from things done to him or whether it was from natural causes or anything he did to himself. But for those things that were done to George, he would be here today. Our doctors discovered something that nobody else had. They discovered that George's neck was broken. That knee on the neck broke his neck. It never made the initial police reports because what were we told? That he died from a medical emergency. He died from cardiac arrest. He died from a fentanyl overdose. We dug for the truth and shared it that day and in the days that followed. We had to satisfy the public desire for transparency. We knew that to win the public, we needed to own the message. And we did own the message because we spoke the truth. George's story was beginning to be told that day. George was denied the most basic right that we all have, what we all are doing in this room because our brains are telling us to do it without even thinking about it, and that's breathe. The other truth that was evident not only that day, but has been throughout my life, and is true for you today also, is that good people need to be intentional about choosing to be good. Good people cannot be complacent. You will need to commit yourself to creating an equal or greater level of good than what you see right now. You must commit to that or else not risk being a change maker. And we heard that today. You have to make conscious choices in the same way as those who choose to expose lies in order to arrive at the truth. And as a trial lawyer, that's what I do. And that's what you can do, not even being a trial lawyer. Now, what does George Floyd have to do with you today? He is an example of the pursuit of transparency and accountability to expose the truth, creating a greater good for humanity. It is the beginning of your story that you will begin to write for yourself. You are getting closer to seeing your future as your story gets told. Now, I am so pleased to be with you today to help you mark this meaningful transition in your life, but also to help you process what comes next. You've been completing your education at a very difficult time, a very cathartic time, but also very fascinating time. Pandemic has done that to us, has it not? It's highlighted issues that we may not have seen before, but we've been confronted with them. So I do want to thank all of you who are here today, especially Interim Chancellor Javier Reyes, the faculty, the staff, the University of Illinois Chicago alumni, family. Thank you so much for being here. We certainly haven't solved all of our problems, have we? But what I'd like to share with you today is what has been the very interesting view from my seat, and how I think what I've seen and heard and done could be valuable to you. My road has taken me from university to law school and then to the public defender's office here in Cook County, to ultimately helping shape national policy on crime, policing, and civil rights and other forms of justice, one day, one decision at a time. And as I told my fellow colleagues earlier today, my story would not have been written had I not been a UIC, formerly John Marshall grad. My story here in Chicago could not have been written had it not been for this institution. The things I have to share today, I believe, have value no matter what you believe. By default in our society these days, we now tend to label ourselves and others like this: conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republic, a D or an R. This overly simplistic system does more harm than good, dividing rather than clarifying in a constructive manner. But regardless of your views or the views of the person sitting next to you, we all want the same things, don't we? Respect, peace, to feel safe in our communities, to feel safe in our home, to have our civil rights lawfully upheld, to drink clean water, to breathe clean air. And I believe the way to get there requires everyone to be socially conscious and commit to goodness, and to be intentional on how you do those things day by day to build a career, a life, a community that is positive. I would define my work, which is actually our work together, especially when it comes to George Floyd, with words I hope you feel currently or inspirationally describe you: compassionate, diligent, and dedicated. We had clarity of thought and knew there was not a moment to waste to share what we knew in the pursuit of justice for George's family. But even that was not enough. We felt strongly that our mission was much bigger than even that case. The country was ripe in asking for an evolution in civil rights for the first time in a generation, way before any of you had been born. I'm pleased to say we succeeded on some of that. We secured an historic settlement on behalf of George's family against the city of Minneapolis. We showed the value of George's life in a way other cases had failed from that day before. What does our Constitution say? It says life, liberty, and equality for all. It never anywhere says just for some. On that day, George's life was equal to all of ours. But I also failed. We worked tirelessly to bring broader change by creating laws and the necessary funding to provide clear standards, guidelines, and transparency to professionalize law enforcement, a beginning to create more trust between police and people, trust that would help everyone, including police. The George Floyd Justice in Policing Act passed the U.S. House of Representatives, but it never made its way past the Senate. It never got those votes. And despite our good intentions and hard work, we did not succeed. We did end up at the White House this past May as a presidential executive order on policing was signed. And I can tell you that East Room was magnificent. It was beautiful. I was in awe. But the satisfaction was missing. We got punched, but we got back up. It is the beginning now of some improvements in the criminal justice system, but it was not all that we believed was necessary. Did we fail, or are we still on that bridge to justice? I can't answer that, at least for now. Our mission is not complete, and that's because this story is still being told. But what I do know is this, that without a plan and conscious choices every day toward that plan, we never would have gotten anywhere. And that's where you have to be. That's where you have to think. And that's one philosophy of mine I think you might find helpful. You see, someone asked me a while ago, how did you prepare for the George Floyd case? And the answer was pretty simple. I had been preparing my whole life. So once that heavy burden of civil justice fell into our lap, I knew where to go. I knew how to be that architect of change. Intentions take time. I graduated from UIC College of Law in 1985. Change takes time. Imagine your career to be a big, long freight ship. In order for that ship to make a perfect turn, it takes a long time. And that should be your aim in your career. So, class of 2022, social responsibility is not an option. It is essential to our community that people pay attention, stand up for good, and use their talents to help others. As graduates, this is now how you have to do this before it's too late. And let me tell you, I am not a songwriter. I have a terrible voice. But what I can do is write stories. My stories bring people that have been killed back to life, or those who have been wounded a voice when they cannot speak. Think of yourself as that same torchbearer as you carry the UIC flame with you past here today. You must learn every day. I will tell you there is not a day that goes by that I do not learn, that I do not carry another bit of knowledge to the next day, and I accumulate that day after day, week after week. Today is the beginning of your new education, and you will have one every single day. Since I was in your seat in the early 1980s, I've looked at my life with a 5-year plan. What do I want to do? What do I need to get there? Every day as I plan my to-do list, it is through the lens of me, but 5 years from now. That commitment to being in a better and different place, to achieving something bigger, helps me stay prioritized. And I do whatever it takes to stay on my path. Indeed, I will ask you to join my club of one, no dues required, of the Whatever It Takes Club. Some days it works well, but there are days that are not as smooth. Days you even take a step backwards, but day after day, whatever it takes, I keep pressing forward. I call that the what of what I do. But just as important for you now is knowing your why. And here's another key thing that was evident in what we saw in Minneapolis with the Floyd case, and even with other cases. There are ways to fight for justice in many of these situations through legal means or changing laws, both of which take time. But you need to be equally intentional about doing good to provide a counterbalance against inappropriate forces. Graduates, you can make that commitment to yourself in an instant and be that why as a change maker. Exercise your First Amendment rights and speak freely. Let your voice be heard and pump your fist in the air when you support a cause. A dear friend of mine, who may or may not be the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, at least for the next few weeks, she has a great slogan. When she tells her congressional constituents what they have to do to be a congressman, she says, winning is a decision. And me, I take it a step further. Being good, being great, is also a decision. Pick your side and choose the side of what you believe is right. And what I'm talking about here, and what you've heard from our esteemed speakers before me, is social justice. This institution is the perfect place for that. Social justice is a choice. But there are other critical types of justice: environmental justice, gun justice, which also calls for good people to do good things and make conscious choices for your community. That is its own kind of justice. Unfortunately, when it comes to environmental justice, we only have a finite space that we can work with on this earth and have a clean environment. We now need to fight for it every single day. Fight to protect what is clean, clean what has been damaged, and all of this takes dedication. And you know what this takes? You. In just a few weeks, there will begin a trial on an individual case of incredible proportions. It's an environmental case where one of at least 800 people who were made very sick or died because they breathed. They breathed silent, odorless, colorless poison that was in the air near their homes and schools for decades, until someone thought to check the air quality and sounded the alarm. That alarm mobilized one person and then another and then another, until many committed themselves and they got together and made that source of pollution stop. And now together we fight for justice in court for those who were made sick. Their voices were heard, their speech was free. They used the power of assembly to make a difference. And what I say to you is this: choose justice in any of its forms. Choose to be a human connector with a human who sits next to you. Put your phone down for a second. And who's sitting to your right and to your left? Because when you choose to connect with them, that is when you can gain the power of assembly. That is when you gain the power of your freedom of speech, and you can make a difference together. We're almost done. Next year, you never give a trial lawyer a microphone. You do know that, don't you? Are you clapping for me to be done, or because you want to hear just about 3 more minutes? Give me 3 more minutes. Next year, the law firm I co-founded with my friend and law partner is 25 years old. I am proud of the impact litigation we have contributed to our community and the good that we have done for those who deserve it. The longevity of that firm and its successes has been directly related because we did connect with our neighbors to our left and to our right. Now, you and I are actually both looking at the future the same way, wondering what we can accomplish next, wondering how to use what we've learned today and tomorrow. And how do we do it? 5 years at a time. Take that look forward. You don't have it all. You don't have to have it all figured out right now. Sometimes there will be doors that will open and some will close. But pick the one that you believe is the right one. You're allowed to take turns and change directions, because I did too. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I was young. Thank you for that shout out. But you will find out what's right for you. Your life will be an evolution of learning with your education here at this great institution as your base. And a career, a life, is almost never a straight line. It's more like building a house out of bricks where one layer makes another layer possible. So now we take a breath, a very deep breath. It's time to get going and get great. Do something you know and do it well. Start to build your vocation, add value to whatever community you choose to live in. Have a plan and allow yourself the grace to adapt that plan as you and the world evolve. You are now the owner of your message, and create it. As I finish, do not be intimidated. Be bold, but act with humility and forever optimism. You will message yourself to be the person you see yourself in 5 years. Once you own your message, you can then be the speaker of truth to power. Choose justice in any of its forms, and you will make a difference. Be the change maker. Are you ready to do whatever it takes and start running through walls to tell your story? Are you ready to take the ride of your life? This is where I leave you. Anyone who knows me, who's listened to an opening statement or a closing argument that I've ever given, I always throw pop culture into it. And here's my pop culture for you. I love right now the show called Rogue Heroes. True story about World War II. They're on a search and destroy mission. They're doing good for their countries. And they have one saying on their way to success: who dares wins. I dare you. Congratulations, graduates 2022. Fists up in the air. Let's see the fists up in the air. There you go.